Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Alberta News and Views and the Alberta Report podcast. I'm going to focus on stories that just aren't getting enough traction today because there's so much going on in the world. So bear with me. I'm going to try and keep my head on straight. Let's jump right into this. Astounding, shocked, flabbergasted I am. RCMP refused to share criminal data not only with the FBI and DEA, but also our own government of Alberta. Yes, they are a federal force beholden to Canada only. Check this out.
We have 4,000 organized crime groups and gangs in Canada. I had heard that there was one group in particular that was victimizing people in Edmonton. We contacted the RCMP to see if we could get some surveillance or some intel on that. They said they couldn't share that with me. So they do not report to our government. They report to Ottawa, and we're now in a point where we have to start a special intel unit within our sheriffs so that we can understand which of our communities are being impacted by these thugs. So I would respectfully disagree with you. There's a reason why those who are in rural areas have expressed frustration at the lack of response from RCMP, and what we are doing is responding to that. In addition, on his way out the door, Justin Trudeau finally said publicly what he's been telling us for years, is that he thinks the RCMP should become more like a federal FBI and should leave community contract policing. And we don't want to have what happened to us in 1917, where they just bailed on us, and we ended up having to scramble to create a police force. If they're going to bail on us, we've got to start planning by supporting municipalities who want to get their own service and by also shoring up our sheriffs.
Thank you, Premier.
There's more.
I must tell you, one of the issues that we have with the RCMP is, unfortunately, they don't take direction and work with us on our policing priorities. This is why we have had to set up a special fugitive apprehension team. You would have thought the RCMP should have led that. They didn't. We shouldn't have had to set up a special border control team with our sheriffs. We had to because the RCMP did it. We shouldn't have had to set up our scan team to shut down drug houses. We do. We have our own surveillance team with our sheriffs who work collaboratively with the others. You'd think that that would be one of the services they would provide. And why don't they do that? It's because they're about 20 to 30% short in every detachment. They have contracted with us to have 1,911 positions. At any given time, we're only about 1,400, and that is a story across every jurisdiction that is policed by the RCMP. They just don't have the capacity to fill the detachments. One more story.
Like pretty much everything in Canada that has to do with government, it has become unsustainable, and it is collapsing or has collapsed, which is why Danielle Smith went forward with the Alberta Police Force. And yes, like she said, this has happened before. We used to have our own police force. The RCMP is part of the blob. Continuing on from Blacklock's reporter. Prime Minister's promise of millions in green fuel subsidies follow Environment Canada's mission. The industry is struggling and can't meet the federal government's own climate regulations. Projects have been canceled. So Mark Carney promises, he calls them investments now. I call them bailouts because that's what it is. Subsidies are bailouts. And it seems like over half of the Canadian economy is dependent on the federal government's bailouts or investments, which comes from the taxpayers. So really, the taxpayers are investing in Canada, as Justin Trudeau loved to say. We're investing in Canadians and the Canadian future. Fuck, I hate it when he said that. Continuing on, Elon Musk says, let's change the law. It really is that simple. Between now and then, name and shame the DAs and judges who enable murder, rape, and robbery, but especially shame those who funded the campaigns of the DAs and judges. That will make the biggest difference. And yes, I am talking about this poor Ukrainian girl that got stabbed while she was minding her own business on the bus. Now, there is a big story with this in a story that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of. So from Xavier de Russo, whatever. So let me get this straight. A bartender can go to prison for serving drinks to a drunk person if they drive and murder someone. But judges aren't accountable after letting a 14-time repeat offender murder a young woman. This dude was let out 14 times. Sounds a lot like Canada, but there's more. The judge who did this was getting kickbacks in taxpayer-paid treatment for everyone that she sent out because she had her own Pinnacle Recovery Services company. Now, I didn't fact check this 100%, but it would make a lot of sense if that is what's going on. Why are judges not held accountable for letting repeat offenders out on bail? They should know better. Judges, I think Doug Ford said this in Ontario, judges actually have the power to interpret things differently and use their better conscience to stop the madness, stop the crime and chaos. But you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why so many judges on board with this? Why is it happening? Why is this happening? The smartest trillionaire, the God himself, Elon Musk said, let's change the law. It's just like I always say, let's just get Western independence. Why are we dealing with all of this shit? Let's just get our independence so we can build our own country properly. Seriously, we have more than enough of anything and everything we could ever dream of right here. We can change the laws. We don't have to be part of the circus. We can leave the circus. Seriously, people. It's astounding to me that Canada or that Alberta is still part of this blob madness. Continuing on from the food professor. If you really want to know where the economy is headed, don't ask an economist, ask a trucker. I did, and they usually see the signs months before the data confirms it. What I heard isn't good news for the Canadian economy. And I posted on this a long time ago. Anytime I post about the economy, the algorithm just dumps on it. Does not like me talking about the Canadian economy. So what is the food professor talking about? He's talking about loads are getting lighter. Our exports are getting decimated. Miles are getting shorter. People aren't ordering stuff. Warehouses are getting quiet and it takes longer to get paid. That is the biggest one. It is taking longer to get paid. Therefore, the chain is starting to get backed up and they're starting to tighten the belt and cut the fat, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm used to this in the oil field, in the oil and gas industry for sure. As soon as it gets over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, then you start to wonder if they're actually going to pay at all. Because if they didn't pay you, then they didn't get paid. And then the person that was supposed to pay them, they didn't get paid either. That is what's going on with the truckers. Continuing on. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. Dusty Robotics just invented a new tool that every single construction company will end up buying. Just like a Roomba, it drives around and it's not cleaning. Instead, it's printing the floor plan onto the slab. So simple, so powerful. I love posting stuff like this and showing people what an Alberta independence could look like. Well, Canada is still trying to figure out which bathroom to use. We could be light years ahead of them because Alberta could have a country that has a no-nonsense policy and a no-nonsense government that is elected by the people for the people. So they can go full bore with robots and a monetary system and an education system and a healthcare system and a system because we can. This little thing is incredible. Check this out. So instead of having to chalk lines and measure and all this crap, it actually just prints it. It prints the plans right on the floor. It's incredible. With the numbers and the diagrams. And what else it can do is it can put QR codes on the ground as well. So when one contractor leaves, another one comes in and beeps it, and he can pick up right where they left off with special notes. And here is one of the engineers that worked on it. I'm one of the development engineers of this robot and have worked on 3 generations of it over the last 6 years. I'm happy to see it's getting some wider recognition. Layout is typically a very manual process requiring a skilled worker to snap lines on hands and knees. With this robot, they now supervise the robot while it does the drudgery of accurately putting the lines down for them. Other information, such as the QR codes and detailed notes, can be put down as well. It doesn't really replace a worker, but it does give them a tool to work faster, more accurately, and more efficiently. Think of it as providing a medieval monk transcribing documents, a word processor, and a laser printer. Exactly. Now, when I see robots like this, and I think Alberta independence, I think of fast food chains, maybe like Tim Hortons and A&W, all these great restaurants that have just completely gone to shit the last 3 years. Please bring on the robots. Bring on Alberta independence first. Bring in a no-nonsense government. Bring in education again, and bring on the robots so we can have a society, a country, a movement, a future that is just light years ahead of the blob. Continuing on from Contrarian. Proof. Calgary's climate emergency declared by Mayor Yodi Gondek in 2021 was a total scam. Couldn't see this coming. The city just bulldozed an entire city block that was a park to condo towers in a residential area. Almost like they might be getting kickbacks. So condo towers are better for climate than a park. Taxing at will is what this climate emergency was all about, and changing zoning to destroy families and home equity. And city council went along with it because they know it's a blank check. Yes, that is what climate anything is. Green anything is, especially with the blob in Canada. Get out and vote October 20th before Calgary turns into a wasteland like Toronto. Western independence. And here is the park. They bulldoze this thing. They wanted the footprint it sits on to build condos. That is the 15-minute city stuff, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows about that. Continuing on. I don't know if this is true, but it is a genius plan if it is. Russia is warning that the United States will leverage stable coins backed by treasuries to offload $35 trillion in debt. Everybody knows there is a monetary reset happening. They just don't know what it's going to look like. This definitely could be what it will look like. Pushing global adoption, then devaluing the dollar, leaving the world holding the bag. Let me read that for you again. The United States will leverage stablecoins backed by treasuries to offload $35 trillion in debt, pushing global adoption, then devaluing the dollar, leaving the world holding the bag. I explained this in Genius Act weeks ago. I'm not going to show you this because it's just some Russian dude going on about that. I will keep you updated with as much as I can when I can. All of you out there, like, share, and take care. And remember, all roads lead to Western independence. Think of the future for your children and for your grandchildren. We could end all of this nonsense with a party that is built and elected by the people for the people. Imagine you can get rid of the blob. You can write your own laws. Seriously, like, share, and take care.